Hi, today's video is all about quick tips in the garden. I would love to be able to spend all day, every day in the garden. That sounds actually pretty wonderful. But unfortunately, life gets in the way. I am a busy mom of 5, and I really have to make the most of the time that I have to spend in the garden. So today I'm going to share some of my favorite quick tips with you. I've learned these quick tips through the years in gardening, and also as from other gardeners have shared their ideas with me. So I'm going to share some of those best tips that I've learned today in the garden. If we haven't met before, my name's Judd from Growing in the Garden. I love to share helpful tips and garden inspiration so you can be successful in your own garden. But before we get started, if you have a gardening friend that might be interested in this, tag them in the comments or share this video with them. And be sure and share some of the garden tips that you've learned in the comments as well. I would love to learn some more tips. I need all the help I can get, and I love the gardening community here in social media. I think we all really are rooting for each other, no pun intended, and helping each other out. So let's get started. Okay, so one of the first tips I'm going to talk about, and this is something you've probably all heard, but I'm going to tell what I do with eggshells in the garden. So first of all, we all know that eggshells have calcium, which is good for the garden. There's also organic matter, which is also good for the garden. So if you put your eggshell into the compost, and even if your compost heats up really high, it's probably going to come out looking just about like this. So really the trick is that you want to make sure this eggshell gets crushed up. Now these eggshells have been sitting out for a day or so, and so they're nice and crunchy, so I can break them up like this. So I could just break up these eggshells, put them right in my compost, and then they would be on their way to helping my garden. Another thing that you can do, even if you don't compost, and you guys know that I think you should compost, but if you don't, this is something you can do, and this is what I do with my eggshells. After I make my kids their kale smoothie in the morning, I throw the eggs. If I have a dozen eggs, I kind of save up my eggshells, and I throw those in the blender, add some water, blend it all up so they are all blended up, and then I've got that nice kind of liquidy eggshell stuff, and I go out and I just pick a spot in the garden and I mix it in, and so that's taken care of. They're adding organic matter and calcium to the garden. Now, is this a quick fix? No, but are we about improving the life of the soil and the health of the soil? Yes. So over time, this will absolutely do that. So don't throw away your eggshells. I want you to feel a little guilty if you throw some eggshells away. Don't throw them away. Let them dry out, crumble them up, or pop them in the blender and just put them right into the dirt. So that's my great tip for eggshells. All right, many of you have heard that coffee grounds are useful to use in the garden. But how do you use coffee grounds? Actually, I think most of you have heard that, because the Starbucks that I like to go to for my free coffee grounds, someone's already beat me there most of the time when I go. So maybe I shouldn't share this tip, because it's kind of hard to find coffee grounds these days. But because I like you, I'm going to share this tip with you. There's a few different ways that you can use coffee grounds. So you can see this nice, rich coffee grounds here. My favorite way to use coffee grounds is, because I compost, is to put them right into my compost. If I get a nice big bag, if I hit the jackpot at Starbucks and I have this big bag of compost, or a big bag of coffee grounds, I like to spread it among my compost that's cooking, and I love to watch the thermometer, the gauge, just shoot up. That boost of nitrogen really heats up my compost and really gets it going. And so that's my favorite way to use coffee grounds. But if you don't compost, don't worry, there's still another way you can do it. You can also just get these nice coffee grounds and mix them into the top little bit of your soil. Especially between plantings, that's a great time, because they're going to add organic matter, and they're going to attract micronutrients. And another thing in your garden soil that loves coffee grounds is worms. So as you add in the coffee grounds, that's going to feed the worms and kind of get that whole good thing going. So again, coffee grounds, use them in your compost or add them right to your soil, but coffee grounds are a great and usually cheap or free addition to add to your garden. One of my favorite vegetables to grow in the fall and winter garden here in Arizona is celery. It is so convenient to have homegrown celery that I can just go out and pick a stalk or two from, have my kids run out and get a little bit of celery. And you juicers, I know you love to juice celery, so pay attention to this tip. It will make growing celery so simple for you. You can always plant celery from seeds, from starts that you get at your local nursery. But my favorite way to plant celery is to get some celery from local grocery store. Try and get organic if you can. And this is all you're gonna have to do. You're gonna get the celery and you're gonna cut it so you have a stalk that looks about like this. And some people like to soak theirs. I don't do that, and I've been able to grow it fine. So we've got our celery ready to go, and I'm gonna show you how I plant it. Okay, so I've got my cut off celery stalk, and I've got some rich, compost-rich, amended soil. Celery, heavy feeders. They like a lot of nitrogen, and so you also want to have a place that's going to get plenty of moisture. Celery does not like to dry out. It will get stringy and bitter celery, not that good. So you want to make sure two things about where you plant. You want to have lots of compost, nitrogen, and make sure it's going to get regular water. So I've got a great spot right here. So all you're going to do is dig down, work in the soil, and basically you're just going to bury the celery. This was where the roots grew before. This is where they're going to grow again. I'm going to put that root end down and then cover it up with soil. It's just that easy. In a few days, we're going to see some nice celery sprout out, and I like to harvest my celery from the outer part of it. I don't like to harvest the whole thing at one time. So I plant a few of these, and I will have continuous celery all winter long. All right, in Arizona we have a lot of citrus. It's actually one of the 5 C's. Look up and see what the other 4 are. So we have a lot of citrus, and we're coming into citrus season, which is the best time of year. We also have, unfortunately, a lot of pill bugs. Some people call them potato bugs. They're those little roly-polies. My kids like to collect them when they're little. Unfortunately, roly-polies like to eat plants. And I planted some greens the other day, and I noticed that I came out and a lot of the little leaves were munched on. So a good friend on Instagram shared this tip with me. So what you do is, with the citrus, you're going to want to cut it in half. And then you're going to want to put that citrus right into the affected area where you've seen the pill bugs. And the next morning, I like to do it at night, and the next morning you'll go out and it's going to just be covered in those little pill bugs. So I throw the pill bugs away. They're not a friend in my garden. So I will knock them off into the garbage can, and I'll reuse the citrus several times. So as with most things in organic gardening, this is not a quick fix. This is not one day you're going to put the citrus down and the next day all the bugs are going to be gone. Organic gardening normally involves a little bit more work. We're going to be consistent about it, and over time you're going to see an improvement in the number of pill bugs. I'll show you, if you can kind of come right here. We're going to look down and see these are the little greens I was talking about. And I put this on about an hour ago. Let's see if we've caught any yet. Yeah, there's a couple. They do better overnight. They like to come out at night and feed. So you can see these hungry little pill bugs are eating all my greens. So I don't want them to do that. So I'm going to leave these here overnight, and tomorrow morning I'm going to come out, and hopefully instead of eating my greens, they're going to suck onto that citrus juice, and then I'm going to be able to throw those bugs away. And we want these to get nice and big. I don't want to share with the pill bugs. So that's another tip for using citrus to take care of pill bugs. All right, my next tip is about basil. Most of you already know this, but it took me a couple of years before I learned this tip when I was growing basil. So for those of you who may not know it, I'm just going to share it. Basil loves to be pruned. The more you prune it and pinch it, the more it's going to grow. And the trick when you prune it is you want to look for where 2 leaves are. You want to have a nice big bushy basil plant, kind of like this one. And you want to harvest it a lot. You want to make sure that you're keeping it cut, because if you don't cut it, you can see here that this one is starting to have some flowers. And when it goes to flower, the production shifts to producing seeds. This plant feels like it's got to produce seeds, and the leaves are going to become bitter. So for sure, you always want to clip off the flowers. The next thing you're going to want to do with basil is you're going to want to look, I'll cut this one so you can see, and you're going to want to cut where there are 2 leaves, and always cut just above that, and then from those 2 leaves, new sprouts will grow. So instead of having a tall, spindly plant with just a few leaves, the more you do that, you're going to have a big, beautiful basil plant with plenty of basil to harvest for all your pestos, to share with your neighbors, and just to smell, because basil smells divine. All right, my next tip is all about pepper plants. Arizona pepper plants grow really well almost year-round here. If we have a hard freeze, sometimes we lose some of our pepper plants, but I've had pepper plants live 3 or 4 or 5 years, and they keep producing. You give them a nice big prune about this time of year, and another one in the spring, and they seem to just keep producing. One thing that can really help pepper plants that I do as a consistent practice, at least monthly, is to give them a foliar spray of Epsom salt. So you hear foliar and you think, okay, that's like a fancy gardening thing. I'm not a really fancy gardening person. Okay, foliar is just a simple way of saying that you're going to spray it on the leaves. So that's definitely something you can do. You can spray something on the leaves, and then you can use foliar in conversation, and people will think you're a fancy gardening person. So you're going to give your pepper plants a foliar spray of Epsom salt. So I like to use kind of a heavy-duty spray bottle. This has a nice output, so my hand doesn't get too tired from spraying all the time. And you want to look and see how much you have, but this is 32 ounces, which is perfect, because you're going to put in 1 teaspoon of Epsom salt to 4 cups of water, and we know that 4 cups is 32 ounces, right? I won't do too much math. I think I'll probably make a mistake if I do too much on camera. So I've got Epsom salts here. Okay, this is another great use for a ladder in the garden, is to help you make your foliar spray for your Epsom salts. All right, so I'm going to get 1 teaspoon of Epsom salt. I'm going to put that in my 4 cups of water. And make sure that with the water that you're using, water that it's okay to go on your plants. If you have soft water inside your house, don't use that water. That water actually has a lot of salt in it, and you don't ever want to water your house plants with it, or use it for your foliar sprays, or use it in the garden. So make sure you're getting it from a tap that does not have soft water. So we've got our teaspoon of Epsom salt in our spray bottle. Put this lid back on. This water has been sitting out here, so it's nice and warm. All right, so I've got my Epsom salts in here, and why it's dissolving, I'm going to tell you a little bit about why you want to use Epsom salt. So first glance, you might think, salt, that's not good for my garden. I don't want to put salt in my garden. Epsom salts are actually not salt. They are magnesium sulfate, and the magnesium sulfate will do a couple of things in your garden. It's going to strengthen the cell walls of your plants. And who doesn't like strong cell walls in our plants? We want them to be strong and healthy. And second, those strong cell walls are going to help the plant use the nitrogen in the soil. So peppers are obviously heavy feeders. They're fruiting a lot. So we want that uptake of the nitrogen to the plant to be great. So we're going to use this Epsom salt solution as a foliar spray on our pepper plants. And you can do this every cup, because it's a pretty weak solution. You can do, I wouldn't do more than like once a week. I would recommend, once every couple of weeks or once a month. During the growing season, when it's just growing and producing and you're seeing lots of blooms, it's okay, do it once a week, and keep that production going. So we've got it all dissolved in here, and we're gonna go over, we've got this poblano pepper plant. It's gotten really big. This is just a 1-year-old pepper plant, but it's in a great spot. It loves this spot. It gets morning sun as the sun comes up over. Look at these, lots of pepper plants and lots of blossoms, and these are all going to benefit from it. So I'm going to use this spray. You want to get underneath the leaves. You can see why you want a high input sprayer, because you want to make sure you're getting as much of the plant as you can. So it's spraying. I'm going to get this whole plant here, walk around this ginormous potato vine, sweet potato vine that's taking over. You want to make sure that this pepper plant is getting lots of spray there. Okay. So what else can I use this on, right? I've got this spray bottle all ready to go. I have some left. Other plants that would benefit from an Epsom salt foliar spray. Tomatoes. Tomatoes also work great with this. Roses. So take the time, make up this spray, and go around your plant, feed your plants. Those cute little blossoms there, getting all happy because they've got their Epsom salt spray. Use up this bottle, look around your plant, your garden, find plants that can use it. So hope that tip helps. Be sure, this is a good one. Be sure and do this tip. Super easy, really inexpensive, and a great way to feed your plants. All right, this tip is about carrots. My family, their favorite thing from the garden is fresh pulled carrots. They have a flavor that is unique to homegrown carrots. We love them. The flavor is really great, and nothing beats pulling a fresh carrot out of the ground. We really, really love that. But the tricky thing with carrots is getting them to germinate. It's getting that little seed. You can see here, these carrot seeds are teeny. They're so little, you probably can't even see them. They are really little, and they dry out very easily because right now is the time to plant them, but it's also still kind of hot outside. And so those carrot seeds can dry out really easily. And a dry seed, I've said this before, a dry seed is a dead seed. So it's not gonna germinate. Once you get this carrot to germinate, this carrot seed to germinate, carrots really don't require a lot. Consistent watering, even moisture. They don't want too much nitrogen because you'll get too much, too many greens and not enough carrots. Good soil. Carrots aren't picky. The tricky thing is getting them to germinate. And I'll tell you, true confession time, I've planted carrots 3 times this fall, and I'm not having good success. I've been going out of town, not paying attention, and not giving them the care really that they need to germinate. So I was talking to a gardener friend of mine, and she shared a tip that has been helpful for her. And so I tried it, and so far I think it's working. I'm noticing that I planted it 2 days ago, and I'm noticing that the soil is staying evenly moist all day long. And so her tip really is, to use cheesecloth. Really inexpensive. You can find this, most grocery stores even have it. And you can get quite a bit for a very low price. So you're going to want to plant your carrot seeds, and again, to make it easier on yourself, when it comes time to thin your carrots, try and just plant 1 or maybe 2 carrot seeds, which is tricky. It's kind of hard. Use seed tape, do different things to kind of space your carrots correctly to make it easier on yourself later, and cover them with just a little bit of dirt. That's the tricky part. They just need a little bit of dirt, so they're not really deep in the soil, and that's why they dry out. So once you've got them planted, covered with a little bit of dirt, then I put the cheesecloth on. And you can see here in the garden, this cheesecloth has been on here for a couple of days. And I also interplanted my carrots. This is another thing that I like to do, another tip I guess, with radishes. Radishes are super quick growing. They're gonna be done here long before the carrots are, and that helps to kind of space the carrots out a little bit too. So my radishes have popped up, and I'm really hoping that I see my carrots, but this cheesecloth is holding in just enough of that moisture that I feel like these carrots are gonna germinate and do great. So give it a try. Let me know in the comments if you've done this, if you've done something else. Another friend was telling me that she uses burlap. So give burlap a try. If you have some burlap around, you don't have cheesecloth, try that. But really the trick is, remember with carrots, keep them moist and help them germinate so we can have that really fun exciting pulling the carrot out of the ground moment. All right, a tip about annual flowers, and zinnias right now are looking gorgeous. I really have loved this little spot for zinnias this year. They're doing great. So just a couple of small tips when you're growing flowers. So if you're growing them for cut flowers, you want to make sure that you're keeping them cut. The more you cut, the more blooms you're going to get. So it's kind of like that principle when we were cutting off the annual flower over there. You want to make sure that you're keeping them pruned. And when you're cutting, you want to go down to the base and cut as far down as you can. So you're getting that full stem. So we're getting towards the end of the season for some of these annual flowers, so you might not be using it as a cutting garden. You might be thinking, I want to save seeds for next year. And if you do, that's great. So what you're going to do is you're not going to be able to save seeds from these flowers that you cut. You're going to want to leave the flower on the plant as long as possible. You're going to see it change, just like it changes from a bud to a bloom, and then you're going to see the inside get bigger as those seeds grow and develop, and you're going to want to let it completely dry out on the stem. The longer you can leave it attached to the plant, the bigger and healthier those seeds are going to be, and the better they will be for next year. And it's wonderful to save your own seeds because these plants have adapted to growing in your area and in your conditions. So each year, as you grow from your seeds that you've saved and save the seeds, that plant is adapting to the growing conditions in your area. So I encourage you to save seeds. So be sure and think about that in your garden. Allow time for some plants to mature and save the seeds from the best plants. You don't want to save seeds from sickly or diseased plants. We don't want those things to continue on. We want to be sure and save from our very best. Like this spot, these zinnias have been so happy here. I'm definitely saving seeds from these zinnias to plant again next year. So there you have it. I've shared some of my favorite quick tips for the garden with you. Hopefully some of those tips will help you make the most of the time that you have in the garden. I would love to hear quick tips and tips that you have found in your garden. I love learning from other gardeners. I have learned so much from the gardening community on social media. I've learned a lot working alongside my grandma and my mom in the garden. These are all things that as gardeners we love to grow and share together. So leave in the comments, leave some tips that you've learned. Share this video with a gardening friend. Write their name in the comments and tag them, or share this video if you think it's been helpful. Loved having this opportunity to share these tips with you. Again, my name's Judd from Growing in the Garden, and I hope you get to spend some time in the garden today.